Luffy has finally done it, ladies and gentlemen. He has activated his Gear 5 and becomes a giant to put an end to Kizaru once and for all. But his father Monkey D. Dragon is also on the move for his inevitable face-off against his old friend in Fleet Admiral Akainu. We start in Egghead, where chaos ensues. Ships are sinking, pacifistas are firing, and sea beasts are getting destroyed. The Marines have now made landfall on the island and are awaiting Kizaru to finish his job up in the Labo Stratum. But the GOAT man, Luffy, is here to whoop Lord Zaru's ass.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Luffy is using Snake Man against Kizaru now, and the power of this alone makes the Admiral acknowledge that this truly was the strength that took down Kaido. But what Kizaru doesn't know is that Luffy isn't even going all out. I mean, forget about Gear 5, bro isn't even showing any sign of using Advanced Conqueror's Haki or Ryu. I mean, unless you're trying to argue that Kizaru is as tough as Kaido was, there's simply no way Luffy is going to go all out. That's because he wants to see how far he has come. Remember guys, Luffy's Snake Man is as strong as Katakuri, a Yonko commander, so this isn't a stupid play, and an Emperor is clearly stronger than an Admiral, which was proven with Old Man Whitebeard, and even Shanks' presence against Green Bull. Even the Admirals have ranks, where Akainu and Kuzan reign supreme, so to scale Kizaru just above Katakuri is pretty logical. Kizaru compliments Luffy for being tough, but still asks him why a pirate like him would protect Vegapunk. But Luffy slaps right back saying, why in the world would Kizaru even want to kill Apple Gramps? I mean, just look at him, he doesn't look too dangerous, apart from the fact that he can create a nuclear weapon that can destroy the world. The fact that Luffy has already given Vegapunk a nickname goes to show that the scientist is his friend now, and Luffy will go to the ends of the earth to protect him. Kizaru, in a blink of an eye, teleports far above the island and says to him that coming to kill Vegapunk isn't because he wants to. After all, they have been friends for a long time. It's quite sad, but also ironic, as considering his next action of thinking about the good old times when Vegapunk was enthusiastically speaking about how this mech in Vega Force 01 was the giant robot mankind had always dreamt of. And now Kizaru telling Luffy how speed is power. You know, my man literally taking F equals ma seriously. With this knowledge, Kizaru literally sends a kick to Luffy's face with the speed of light itself. This sends Luffy flying through the very robot that was supposed to be the dream of humanity, showcasing how cold and calculated Kizaru really is. The Admiral figured out exactly what the Straw Hat's plan was and did everything necessary to tear it down, even if it meant to trample on all the memories he had with Vegapunk and Sentomaru. Kizaru claims to be just a cog who has to listen to the higher ups, but we know that's not fully true, as he straight up told Saturn that he simply cannot ignore Sentomaru because it would be an insult to his honor. And even all the way through fighting Sentomaru, he could not stop thinking about the child he once was. And yet, despite reminiscing about these moments, he has no qualms, no hesitation of taking out his friend, and immediately goes for the pacifistas without batting an eye towards anything he just did. Compared to the other admirals and the Fleet Admiral himself, they all have a brand of justice and code of honor that they follow, whereas Kizaru's unclear justice is just that. He has no clear sense of justice and simply acts like a cog in the system. He doesn't need to justify his actions in some sort of ideology or philosophy. The world's government can do all the thinking and can use him just as a tool, which he has accepted to. This is even consistent in the film Z, where Kizaru had no qualms about fighting his old mentor in Zephyr, who was a broken man with broken ideals. In the end, he showed no remorse in killing Zephyr, despite being the one who dealt the final blow to him and the other vice admirals literally crying. And even if it wasn't canon, it was supervised by Oda himself. Because of this, Kizaru might just be the most terrifying admiral, as although Akainu is brutal, there's nothing scarier than the unknown. Going back to the chapter, Frankie and Bonnie gets launched out of the Vega Force 01 before it explodes to bits. Although the Sunny is okay, Kizaru confronts them, reminiscing on how fast Bonnie has grown. Remember, Kuma and her also used to be close to Vegapunk's gang, but knowing how she had it in for the scientist, he tells her to not get in his way, as they have the same goals. But Bonnie has now realized her main character potential and who her real enemies are, so she uses Vegapunk's strongest weapon he has ever designed, a torn-off cable, which does absolutely nothing because she doesn't even use Haki. That's Logia 101. I mean, come on. Like Luffy, Bonnie too has been shot out of the laser dome barrier. This man straight up murdered her while saying she was an old friend. What the frick? Frankie in turn tries to get his revenge. Yeah, by channeling his inner Kuranai sensei and uses a light laser against a man made out of light. What was he thinking with that one?
Your life is nothing. You serve zero purpose.
Anyways, Kizaru disappears and Frankie quickly realizes that he's gone after the true goal of his mission, Stella. He calls the control room expeditiously, where Vegapunk have managed to crack York's code and are now able to disable the barriers. But that no longer matters because Vega Force 01 is gone and Kizaru is here. However, before he can clap his old friend Vegapunk, the myth, the legend, Joy Boy, Sun God Nika is back this time as a freaking giant. Luffy's Gear 5 easily allows him to grab the light man as though he is the fodder. Again, you don't see any sign of advanced Conqueror's Haki, yet Kizaru is sweating buckets. Okay, fine, maybe I'm exaggerating, but he's sweating a little bit. Luffy talks about how he was knocked outside of the barrier and had to cross it twice to get back in, which is insane considering the only one who was supposed to safely be able to enter was a light Logia. The laser technology that Vegapunk has been incorporating in his inventions have been from Kizaru's Devil Fruit. The fact that Gear 5 Luffy was able to tank these deadly lasers shows that Kizaru stands no chance in actually dealing meaningful damage against him. This just goes to show how insane Luffy's durability is in Gear 5 and the power of the Zone Awakening, which not only offers freedom of fighting but also one of the toughest defense in the series. But that's not all, as chapter 1092 confirmed our balls deep theory on how Luffy's Gear 5 hold the power to unlimited energy. Cause after Luffy activates his Gear 5 and becomes a giant, his drums of liberation also becomes large enough for the whole Egghead Island to hear and resonate to. Before against Lucci, Luffy's heartbeat did not reach that far, but now it has. We see this has an effect on the people around Luffy, with their eyes popping out and everything becoming toonverse. But this same power had a different effect to the ancient robot lying around, which finally powered up after 200 years. Now, on our live stream, James Wallace asked an important question, which is if Luffy's Nika fruit is the only thing that can power this robot and is the key to the ancient energy source, then how did this robot climb Marijoa 200 years ago when Zunisha said he hadn't heard Joy Boy's drums for the last 800 years? Well, Robin in chapter 1067 brought up the fact that this robot climbed the red line during the same time discrimination against the fishman rose. This was also the same year the fish people were invited to Reverie for the first time, but for some odd reason it was the last time. Our theory is the reason it was the last time and why discrimination went up was because of the ancient robot's attack. Like Hody Jones 200 years ago, there must have been another faction against the unification of fish people and the humans, and we believe like Hody, they stole the pills in the Tamate box, but unlike Hody, they understood the true purpose of these magical pills. It wasn't steroids for people, but rather an energy fuel for the technology of the ancient civilization, who were able to utilize their Haki to power their technology. However, the pinnacle of energy was from the Haki of Sun God Nika. Hence, by imbuing his Haki, they were able to create the energy pills. When Hody Jones ate it, Nika's Haki and energy made him stronger, faster, and of course, his hair white. Likewise, after running out of this energy, Hody turned into an old, decrepit man, much like how Luffy does after Gear 5 runs out. So, now that we know that these pills were fuels for the tech, there is also the idea that only Luffy or an ancient authority can give this robot instructions. It's likely that the robot went to attack Marijoa because it was trying to complete its mission from 800 years ago during the Great War. However, that was 200 years ago. And this brings us back to the present time. With Luffy's drums of liberation kickstarting the machine, it will also follow his instructions and help them get Sunny out of the island.
And straight into the moon, because that's where the Straw Hats are going next arc, believe it. Everybody join the Moon Gang, put Moon Gang in the comments. Yusuf has to buy me a pizza, a Chick-fil-A, and Chipotle if they go to the moon next arc, so support the Moon Gang. Okay, but seriously, speaking about the ancient robot and how it will replace Vega Force 1's role, we also have to talk about how Vegapunk must have had Kuma extract the robot's memories or will before Kuma himself transitioned his personality into Esper. This isn't far-fetched, as Vegapunk believes non-living objects can be imbued with will and devil fruits. This in turn creates a new personality like we saw with the Straw Hat ship Mary and with the swords like Enma. The memories and will of the ancient robot must have sat with Kuma's original body, and when Luffy finally activated his Gear 5, awakening Joy Boy's return, the robot's will also re-emerged within Kuma after getting all mixed up and hearing the drums of liberation. And after waking up, the first thing it did was resume its original mission. Which brings us to Kuma's insane mission to blow up Marie Joie and get to Egghead Island. As the soldiers come in to fight, Kuma ain't having none of this fodder battle, so he creates a giant Ursa shock, blowing the soldiers out of the way. This shock is deceptively huge, by the way. Like, he is standing on a rubble which looks like a whole war just broke out, but it was just one blast. However, while Kuma was scaling the red line, his opponent was also making his way to Marie Joie as Akainu shows up in front to defend his precious celestial dragon daddies. Low-key, I feel bad for Akainu, man. Like, he gotta deal with Kuzan and Blackbeard pirates messing up Garp and Kobe. His own Admiral Green Bull pissed his pants from just feeling Shanks' haki from 100 miles away. Fujitora was helping the revolutionaries and slaves more than the government during the infiltration. He had to send 30,000 men, 10 vice admirals, and an admiral just to deal with one pirate crew with an old man in Egghead. This man is struggling to keep things together right now. And on top of all this, the waste man of celestial filth has the audacity to disrespect the CEO of Dunkin' Donuts when all he's trying to do is save his ass. This is ridiculous, man. Somebody give this man a break. As the Celestials gather around to bitch and moan about how they are running out of food, especially the lobster, Akainu straight up ignores them and instead asks Kuma that if the government can't control him, then they can't allow such a dangerous man to run wild. But he's still confused on how Kuma has a will to do something when his personality was supposed to have been suppressed years ago. Now, since Akainu doesn't have Balls the Future Sight to know the answers, he just decides to smoke Kuma's ass. However, instead of baking his signature donut, he goes in for his Hellhound attack right into Kuma's face, which only destroys a portion of this Zero Brain Cell robot. And before Akainu could go in for another attack, Kuma uses his Paw powers to poof out of there. Now, this is quite interesting because, let's be honest, if Akainu wanted to destroy Kuma right then and there, he could have. Especially since when he went for the Hellhound punch, he dashed behind Kuma, giving him an opening to run. Even at the start of their confrontation, he makes it a point to exclaim just how dangerous of a man Kuma really is. So why would a seasoned warrior like Akainu take this L? I feel like these two have a bigger history than we realize, especially since Akainu personally came to capture Bonnie during the time skip. Like, what the hell was a Fleet Admiral doing there? Well, we get a little continuation of that flashback. Akainu told Bonnie how it doesn't matter how much she cries because Kuma's memories and personality are no more. He volunteered himself to be reborn as a weapon, but Bonnie doesn't believe this and calls him a liar as her father would never leave her behind. After seeing the mission the body of Kuma seems to be on right now, maybe even Akainu is curious as to what is happening. But the last words he speaks in this chapter hints at a deeper connection with Kuma. While the Celestials are yelling at him like they own him, Akainu wonders where someone who has lost their will and mind by becoming a puppet could be going. This sounds very similar to the Admiral situation, to be honest, where he has a goal or destination in his mind of getting rid of dangerous men like Kuma to protect the innocents at all costs, but the only path he saw and has embarked on is through the Marines, which has now ultimately made him a puppet of the Celestials. Through his entire interaction, he doesn't even acknowledge the dragons that are yelling shooting at him. However, you can see an invisible chain linking him with them through just his action of showing up to defend them as everyone else was busy. However, the real battle Akainu has to go through next might be none other than Monkey D. Dragon. Kuma was with Dragon when he left off to the Red Line. The revolutionaries had just gotten one of their day ones back, so you really think Dragon is gonna let his friend, who has suffered for so long, be sent right back to where he was suffering? No! He is a Monkey D after all. So just like his son is fighting an OG Admiral in Kizaru and his father Garp was fighting another one, being Kuzan, Dragon will complete this trifecta by going head to head against Akainu. This fight might actually be the time when we learn more about the lore of the Green Hockey Man Dragon. Over a year ago, we made a video talking about the links between Luffy and the Hindu god Hanuman, sparked by his Bajrangan attack. We discovered that Hanuman's dad was the wind deva Vayu, and what happens whenever we see Dragon? Yup, wind is blowing or a storm is happening. The parallels don't stop there, as just like Luffy was raised by a different father figure in Garp, Hanuman was also raised by a different father in Kesari, which leads us to his mother or grandmother being likely a celestial dragon, drawing inspiration from Hanuman's mother Anjana, who was a fallen angel from heaven, cursed to be born as a monkey princess. This is similar to how she could have been made an outcast by the celestials for becoming part of the monkey family. Eventually, she met a tragic fate similar to the prejudice-filled deaths of Otahime and Doflamingo's parent, which was the catalyst of Garp never taking up the position of Admiral, and Dragon was sent on a rage-filled quest to revolutionize the world system, which destroyed his family. Dragon witnessed his mother suffering due to the world's lies, mirroring Sabo's experiences with royalty. That's why he was so keen to protect and make him his number two, as he saw himself in the young boy. But before Dragon walked the path of resistance, he went along with his father's plan to change the government from within, as Garp had been training Dragon to become a great marine just like he does with his grandson later on. The link with Akainu comes in with Dragon's age, which is the same, 55 years old. We know Dragon only started the Revolutionary Army formally 22 years ago after the Ohara incident. Before this, it was just a paramilitary front, which suggests that it hadn't been long since Dragon had been on this path. It would be very poetic to see two youngsters who trained side by side in the Marines take up different paths through the tragedies they went through in life. Akainu gave up control of his will to the Celestials and the government to achieve his absolute justice, while Dragon took on full control of his fate by starting his own opposing force. Even the jump start to Dragon starting the Revolutionary Army officially happened due to Akainu's action of calling a buster call upon Ohara. So with each generation of Monkey D family fighting an Admiral, Dragon's links to being a Celestial, a former Marine, and having the same age as Akainu suggests their growth side by side. Dragon versus Akainu is a massive possibility after this chapter, which would tie how Sabo will play part in this. If Dragon doesn't win for whatever reason, Sabo will take the mantle to defeat his brother's killer and the leaders of his army. And if you guys want to learn more about Dragon and what he brings to the table and what he might do in the future, then watch the video on screen. And if you guys want to watch new One Piece episodes alongside us, then hop onto our Discord server where we do weekly watch-alongs to One Piece and sometimes even other animes.